The Cat's Whiskers podcast is proudly sponsored by the Bunkers Hill Hockley. Don't miss Panthers game day offers, including Coors Light at £2.50 a pint.
It's Wednesday, the 7th of February 2018, and it's this week's Ask Cat's Whiskers TV Live. Yes, good evening. It is Wednesday. It is the return of AskTCW. My name is Antoine Marie-Jeanne. And go through your questions tonight. I am joined by the First Lady of the Cat's Whiskers, Miss Tina Taylor.
Hiya.
A very, very tired, after a long trip back from Wales last night, Adam Reddish.
Oh, you had to mention it, didn't you? Good evening, everyone.
It was a good last 10 minutes of the first half, apart from the fourth goal. And obviously, our resident enforcer, it is Mr. Andy Haywood.
Evening.
We are aware the Panthers are playing currently in Belfast, the second leg of the Challenge Cup final. As and when we get updates, and no doubt somebody will pop in and give an update. Just to let you all know, if you're not aware already, it is 5-4 to the Panthers at the end of the second period, with Panthers actually taking a 5-2 lead to bring us within one. Unfortunately, two late goals from the Giants stretched their lead to 3 again. But end of the second period, guys, before we move on, do you still believe, can we do it?
We can do it, but we probably won't.
It's a big ask now, definitely. When it was within one goal, perhaps, you could maybe forgive yourself for getting a little bit excited, but back up to a 3-goal deficit, can't see it, unfortunately.
I think I think if we've got to play desperate hockey, we'll probably get picked off on the break. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Belfast extend that lead even further in the last 20 minutes.
And obviously in Cardiff, they're also chasing a big margin. I believe it was 6-1, 6-2 after the first game. 6-2. It's now 4-1 to Cardiff, so Cardiff have brought it back to within one. So nothing going planned, so it seems, as we go into tonight's Cat's Whiskers. Before we start, obviously we did the podcast on Sunday night live from the Bunkers Hill. Give it a listen if you haven't done already. It's available via our Spreaker website and the Cat's Whiskers website. And obviously, if you want to get in touch tonight, probably the easiest way is our Twitter handle, which is @CatsWhiskersTV. Because we didn't do the podcast on Monday, we didn't get to do the Player of the Month, so we're going to go through the results now. And I've got the Player of the Month for January as well, so Player of the Week, should I say. In third place was new signing Luke Pither, who had a pretty decent opening weekend, it had to be said. In second place was It's Lit, Jeff Brown. Continues to pop in goals as and when needed. And number one was Patrick Galbraith once again. A solid goaltending performance from him, especially on Sunday. Overall, the Player of the Month for January, Patrick Galbraith himself finished third. Ollie Betteridge had a good month. He finished in second place. But Player of the Month is our Super Swede, and it is Eric Lindhagen. So well done to him. Off the back of, before I go for the results of this, guys, I'm going to come to you one by one. One of the questions that Paul added to the Player of the Week this week was, will Vasky Vuo be our last signing of the season? Andy, I'll come to you first.
No.
Do you think we'll sign in anybody in particular? Any position in particular?
Well, I would imagine a defenseman, but I genuinely don't know. The only reason why I say it is because I think I've seen somewhere about some news on Monday, so I presume that might be a player. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay. Tina?
Just to carry on from that, I think the news that you're referring to, Andy, is probably something that Callum mentioned very, what's the word? So it's very mysteriously, but it seems to be related to updates in some fashion or form, or social media. So not wholly convinced it'll be a player, but if it is, then fantastic because if Spang's going to be out for any longer, then we're already looking at a fairly depleted defensive core. So I would like to see another signing. I'm not confident that we're going to see one. So I actually did vote in that poll, and I voted yes to him being the last player we sign.
Belfast have scored again.
Yeah, bloody
hell. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a D-man come to the club. As Tina said, we are short at the back now, and we need a fuller roster as we can possibly get to, boost our chances of finishing the season strongly in the league. Getting good seeding, dare I say seeding. I think we'll be talking about that a bit later, won't we? And having a strong playoff campaign. So. Yeah, we definitely need some support on the blue line because at the moment we're struggling back there. So, do I think we'll sign a player? I actually do think we'll bring a D-man in. Yeah, but as Corey Nielsen said when he was trying to bring a forward to the club, are there any good D-men out there at this time of year? Can we pick up someone pretty good, or will it just be the proverbial body to come in and give us a bit more depth? I don't know, but I think somebody will come.
Well, let's hope so. And I wouldn't mind someone like Kevin Quick, to be honest, because we have picked a couple of decent D-men off on deadline day in years gone past. So that was the Player of the Week question. Those of you that voted, 62.5% of you thought that Vasquez will be our last signing of the season, with just 37.5% agreeing with me and Andy in that we will bring somebody else in. So, well, we'll see what happens. So on to the another question that we received via the Player of the Week. This was via a message. Unfortunately, I don't have a name attached to it. Tina, you can go first on this one. It's quite a difficult one, so be prepared for long answers. Would you rather have a new coach with the same players or Corey with a different group of players?
It's a very loaded question. I mean, the thing is, we've seen Corey Nielsen with lots of different groups of players. Only one of those groups of players has brought us the league title. So we know he can. We know it can be done. Just for whatever reason, we don't seem to be able to do it, basically. And it is obviously the source of much negativity amongst the fan base. I think it can be done. I just think there needs to be some sort of change of ethos within the club. I think there needs to be some sort of investigation or some sort of addressing of the issue of the, in inverted commas, Christmas slump. This year, it's been spectacularly bad. The whole of December, I would love to just write that off. If I could just take December out of the season, chuck it away, we wouldn't be in too bad a position right now, I don't think. But, December was just, so horrific, and more horrific than a lot of Decembers and a lot of Christmas periods that I can actually remember. I think Corey Nielsen's got it in him. I really do. So, but it's a difficult one because if Corey Nielsen were to leave, would we get anything better? If Corey Nielsen's going to go, I would like an experienced coach to come in, and who can do the job better than he can. And if we can't get that, then I would like to see Corey Nielsen with a different group of players.
Okay, Adam.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to what Tina just said there. I mean, it's been frustrating that we haven't consistently challenged for league titles, and it's not like we're always there or thereabouts going into the last few games of the season. We've, for the most part, been quite some way back. So it's frustrating in that sense that we're not even getting towards the home straight, still in with a realistic shot of winning the league. And, we have got a hell of a lot to thank Corey Nielsen for. The trophy cabinet looks infinitely better now than it did before Corey Nielsen became the coach of the Nottingham Panthers. So, we'll always have that to thank Corey for. But I do wonder whether some of his ideas, certainly in terms of coaching a team over the entirety of a league campaign, are getting a little stale. Tina said that he's tried different approaches. He's gone for old and experienced and wise. This year he's gone for young and energetic. With it looks like the last 2 years anyway, we're going to fall a long way short of first place. So, yeah, that league winning season is becoming more of a distant memory now, unfortunately. And I just wonder whether it might be better for Corey to sort of, leave gracefully, as it were, and let someone else take over. But I absolutely agree with Tina in the sense that if Corey is going to go at the season's end, then there's no point replacing him with inexperience, because for a club of this stature and this organisation size, we've got to show that we mean business, and surely we must be in the hunt to bring in a quality coach to the club, a vastly experienced coach, whether it's from North America or from Europe, whatever. But someone that's vastly experienced and understands what it takes to win leagues, rather than appoint a rookie. So yeah, I think it's better the devil than really. And if Corey is going to stay for another season, then would we really expect the group of players that he assembles to go close and mount a really serious league challenge again? I really don't think so.
Andy, Adam picked up on a couple of things there. Anything you want to add?
Well, just that for all his faults and for all his issues and stuff and all the stick that he comes under, he's not alone in the category of struggling to get Panthers challenging consistently. He's the only person that's cracked it since 1956. And there's all the talk, like you say, like Adam says, the whole sort of bet of the devil, and it's that sort of the grass is greener, it's not working now, therefore let's get someone else in. But who comes in? It's a tough one. I don't think it's any sort of necessarily secret, or it would be necessarily a shock that if David Clarke became the coach. Now, I'd love to see David Clarke as the coach of the Panthers because he's a Panthers legend, but by the same token, I don't necessarily know if I'd want David Clarke to be first year coach of the Nottingham Panthers.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look at for instance, using someone like Paul Adey as an example. Obviously I never saw him play. I mean, admittedly, I think I saw him play like 2 games, I think, once in one where we were short-staffed or something. But, fantastic player, but when he was coaching, for whatever reason, it was deemed that he wasn't good enough, so they got rid of him, and then he's gone on to have a pretty illustrious career behind the bench, and seemingly now, obviously, isn't doing it. But, he left us and went to Italy and won in Italy. Then obviously he won in Belfast, and he's got a very good pedigree. And I just think that the issue that we've had before, and to be fair, if we got rid of Corey, then there's a fair chance that it's a similar sort of thing where we have these coaches who are good but are raw, and we get rid of them perhaps either too early, or we don't give them that opportunity to get the experience before we blood them in ourselves, and we see it as, well, they're not good enough, so we'll get rid of it. But then realistically, it turns out, well, maybe they were good enough, but we just either didn't give them a chance, or they didn't have that experience at the time, therefore we didn't see what they could do. So it's tough. For me, I'd have Corey here for as long as he ever wanted to be. But, I appreciate that it's a sport, it's a business-based thing, and obviously if we go we go trophyless this season, which is there's a possibility. It looks like there's just the playoffs now that we can play for. Then you've got to think that perhaps there will be questions asked in the management. But for me, I'd have him back.
Okay, thanks, guys. I hope that answered your question. Whoever sent it in via the Player of the Week, Tony DeMarco via Facebook sent us a couple of questions. So I'll go for his first one first. And it is quite a long one, guys. And Andy, you can kick us off. So Tony says, next season, should the league do more to enforce the under-23 British player rule? At the moment, only about half the teams in the league seem to be supporting it at all, and many don't have any under-23 players on their roster. I would like to see a rule that prevents teams from signing spare imports if they do not already have the 3 under-23 players, even if this is for injury cover. I have no problem if the under-23s are on two-way contracts as long as EIHL clubs have them training full-time and they can call them up for any game as Nottingham currently do.
Well, I think with that one, it's difficult because it's an abusive system regardless. In that sort of ideal scenario, it's a case of, well, if we don't necessarily need them or want them, but they have to train with us, and then we're sending them to, take someone like Tetlow, for example, he's playing in Bracknell this year. So he's not training with the team that he's playing most of his games with, and he's expected to perform in Bracknell, potentially not really knowing anyone, sort of as from a team perspective, because he's expected to be training with Panthers and that. And I appreciate that, he'll be training with better players and getting better coaching and he'll be improving his game no end. But I just think that we're in a strange scenario where you've got to get it right. And I don't necessarily think that just having them train with the Panthers and playing somewhere else is necessarily key. I do think that perhaps more should be done regarding enforcing is probably not the right word, but to encourage teams to sign these players. But at the end of the day, as we've been told, we've scored again, by the way. As we've been told numerous times by various different people connected to various different clubs, it's a fine balance, and we aren't a development league. Whether you think it's a beer league or not, we are a professional league, and we need to have the best possible standard we can have on the ice to encourage people to turn up to games and keep this sport going, because it is still very much a minority sport. So it's difficult because you can't just say, well, we need to develop British players, so we're going to have 4 imports and the rest have all got to be British and that'll be fine, because people will stop coming because the quality would decline. And I know that's not what Tony DeMarco's saying, but as an exaggeration, that's the sort of thing that you have to be wary of. And I just think that in an ideal world, yes, everyone should have 2 under-23 players or 3 under-23 players, whatever it is that was sort of recommended, shall we say. But the issue is, if you can have 14 imports and as many Brits as you want on top of your 2 or 3 under-23s, then there's no space for them on the matchday roster, so it becomes redundant. And whilst it's good that they're getting that training and getting that experience in elite league rosters, you can't help but think that from a player's perspective as to, is it really worth it? It's a lot of travelling if they're ending up playing in in Bracknell, say, or Swindon, and I just think it's a genuinely the whole under-23 things and development is such a real head scratcher for everyone involved. The league, the players, the EIHL, or is it the NIHL now?
NIHL, yeah.
I can never remember which way round it is, but whichever one it is, it's a real head scratcher for everyone involved, because I don't think currently people have got a definitive answer as to what's best for everyone involved. That being the clubs, the players, and GB hockey, Ice Hockey UK in general. And I think it's I think it's sad because there's a lot of very good players that perhaps aren't getting that opportunity to shine in a league that they could compete in. That being said, from a fan's perspective, we're being treated to some of the best sort of stacked CV rosters that we've seen for a long time, and that in its own right is good to see. So it's a really difficult one, and I genuinely think that ultimately no one involved in hockey in this country has got a clue as to how best to approach it, and I think that's what needs to be addressed first. Is people in charge coming up with ways that it's going to suit everyone.
I mean, Adam, an under-23 league has been mooted at some point, and that seems to have gone very quiet.
Yeah.
Obviously, we mentioned on Sunday about having Hazeldine on the bench and not getting any ice time. I mean, Tony actually makes a valid point from his thing, which Andy did pick up on, saying they shouldn't be allowed to sign their imports. Is that how you'd go, or?
Well, I mean, I agree with Andy in the sense that ultimately the teams are involved in a business, and they want to put on the best show and the best product for their fans, because at the end of the day, they want as many people coming through the doors as possible. Now, you can argue that having more under 23 Brits on your roster might dilute the brand and make your team weaker, and I think it will, because as I see it, and I think I might have said this on a previous show, the big issue for me is the absolute huge chasm between the NIHL and the Elite League. Before we had the EPIHL, that had a few more imports playing for each side. I think there might have been 5 imports available for each team, whereas I think this season, and I might be wrong on this, but it's 2 or 3 for every side. So I think the quality of the league immediately beneath the Elite League has diminished slightly, and that's only going to make it harder for young Brits, under 23 Brits, to make that leap between the league that they'll be playing most games in and the league in which they probably aspire to play on a more regular basis as a professional player at some point. And I'm a real believer in sort of aligning an Elite League team with a team operating in a lower division, and having a feeder team. I think that's got the sort of makings of a good plan to try and accelerate the progress that young Brits can make. Give them sort of training time around pros. Get them to understand what's expected to be a professional ice hockey player. But ultimately, it's up to the coach, isn't it? It's up to the head coach on a Saturday or Sunday night. If they feel that player X is ready to throw into a particular situation, then that's up to them. And they put their necks on the chopping block, like Corey does. Does he have the confidence to send out Tetlow on a shift? He probably wouldn't do it at Tetlow's stage of development, but he wouldn't really send him out for a shift where maybe it's a 1-goal game and we're trying to protect a lead against a Sheffield or a Cardiff or a Belfast, whoever. But that's a little bit why we were frustrated, I think, on Sunday, because we felt that 3-0 lead against Dundee in the last few minutes of the game was an ideal opportunity to give Hazeldine and Tetlow a bit of ice time and get them more accustomed to the whole sort of Elite League environment. So it's difficult. Andy's right. I don't think anyone's got a magic wand to wave on this one. It's an infinitely complex puzzle to try and solve. I think that maybe it's the old thing about communication. Are the different tiers talking to each other to try and resolve this as best as they possibly can? I don't know. We're not privy to that sort of thing. But if you've got good communication, if the will is there to advance young Brits through and replace the likes of Colin Shields and Dave Clark, who are coming to the end of their careers, or certainly at the Elite League level, perhaps in the next year or two, then how much do we value the sort of senior GB men's programme? Because if Ice Hockey UK aren't particularly bothered about fielding strong national teams, for Olympic qualifiers or the World Championships, then it sort of devalues the under-23 rule altogether and almost makes a mockery of it, to be honest. So, lots of thinking to be done, but we do need to act quickly before the sort of golden era of GB internationals is lost, and there's very few players waiting in the wings to replace them.
Tina, anything more you want to add? I know you're a big fan of the likes of Ollie.
Yeah, I haven't got much more that I can add on the actual subject of the question, but yeah, I am a massive fan of the young Brits. I want to see I want to see the kids do good, and I want to see a brighter future for British ice hockey. I mean, it's like Andy said, the quality of the product will sort of start diminishing if you try and force more Brits and drastically reduce the import level. With the state of British ice hockey as it is at the moment, it's got to be a slow process. It's not something that you can just do. I would very much like us to be in a position where we can say, yes, we can reduce the import level and the quality won't diminish, because the Brits that we've got have come through a solid structure and their import quality. I would love us to get to a stage where we're not actually using that phrase, import quality, because I'd like our Brits to be equals. I mean, I know that's a very, very long way off, and if I see it in my lifetime, I'll be surprised with all the bitching and backbiting that goes on in British ice hockey throughout all the tiers. I mean, the whole attitude that each league has got towards each other is probably partly responsible for the demise of the EIHL. So, yeah, I haven't really got, as I say, I haven't got anything to add to the question itself, but I would like to see British ice hockey get to a point where we don't need to force teams to, or even bring in a suggested rule where we have a certain amount of under 23 Brits as like a development thing. I would like us to be in a position where we want to do that and we have the structure to do that, but it is a very, very long way off, I think.
Okay, thanks guys. Tony then sent us a second question, and Tina, you might as well carry on. So Tony goes on to say, would you support a change in the playing rules of the Challenge Cup to enforce a minimum 2 Brits, 1 under 23 on the ice at all times, possibly played as a midweek competition to allow the use of EIHL prospects, giving young British players opportunity to play in all game situations?
Simply no, I wouldn't. I think the problem with the Challenge Cup is that it already lacks the kudos it needs to thrive as a competition. It is a competition that is belittled. Those who don't win it call it the Mickey Mouse Cup, and those that do win it aren't really particularly heralded in high esteem by the other 9, as it were, teams, and 11 as it is now. I know that there are teams that would say, well, we'd quite like to win the Challenge Cup. We'd be quite, we'd be quite pleased with that. And the amount of times we've won it, we've probably been quite pleased when we have won it. But it is a competition that is a subject of much derision, and I don't think it would be helped by having enforced rules such as that. I completely see where the logic is coming from, but I just don't think it would work, unfortunately.
And before I come on to Adam and Andy, just a score update for you. Panthers got a power play with 10 minutes to go in the third period and pulled Galbraith to make it 5-3-3. Unfortunately, Belfast have scored twice into the empty net, so Belfast leads 7-6 and probably the final nail in our coffin for the Challenge Cup this year. So, Andy, would you make changes to the Challenge Cup in the way that's been suggested?
Not in the slightest, because at the end of the day, you won't be watching the Nottingham Panthers versus, the Belfast Giants, because it will be enforced having to play EIHL players who don't play for us other than in the Challenge Cup. So, no, not at all. It wouldn't be the teams that people support. So no, I disagree with that. I actually think with the Challenge Cup, to touch on what Tina said, it is a sort of maligned trophy, but it is a maligned trophy by the people who don't win it. It's the same as the playoffs. Every year, whoever wins it celebrates it like it's the greatest thing, in the world at the time. But everybody else says, it's a rubbish trophy, and you don't have to win any games to win it, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a valid argument, but that all changes when you win it. And after tonight's result, there'll be Panthers fans that will say that it is, the Challenge Cup doesn't matter. It's a rubbish trophy anyway. But when we won it, was it 5 years on the trot or whatever? There weren't many people that were at those games who didn't sort of cheer or clap when we scored a goal or when we lifted the trophy. So it is a trophy. It is to be won, and there wouldn't be a single player in the league that says, "No, I don't want to win it," because they will all want to win everything when they sign up, and even players that have signed up for teams that realistically they've probably said, we're going to be battling to make the playoffs this year. That's our sort of goal. They will, at the start of that season, they will be looking to winning the Challenge Cup. They'll be looking to make the playoffs in an attempt to win the playoffs. You look at a team like Fife at the moment. They're on a streak where they could quite conceivably win the league. And at the start of the season, and it's no disrespect to Fife, but at the start of the season, I can't imagine that there was many, talks in the summer between coaches and players saying, we're going to be challenging for the top spot, and we're going to be one of the teams that are looking to dominate the league and to win the top trophy. They probably wouldn't have spoke like that when recruiting. They would have sold it as, we should be making the playoffs, we should be winning our conference, we should be looking at winning a cup. But they've played exceptionally well. They're getting an awful lot of wins, and like I say, now quite easily they could end up winning this league. I still think Cardiff will do it, but if Fife won it from where they are now, it wouldn't be a shock. So it's one of them things. The Challenge Cup, it's like Tina said, it's a trophy that everybody who doesn't win it doesn't care about and says it's a Mickey Mouse trophy, or it's not worth the paper it's written on and that sort of stuff. But for the people that do win it, it's something that they can put on their CV. It's silverware in the trophy cabinet, and they wouldn't change that for much else. Yes, they'd probably change it for a league title perhaps. But other than that, I'm sure they would be quite happy to go home with a bit of silverware.
I mean, Adam, the Challenge Cup is probably the second hardest trophy to win after the league. Certainly harder than the playoffs.
Yeah, you've got more games, haven't you?
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
I don't know. I've always been a fan of the Challenge Cup myself, and as Andy mentioned there, winning it 5 years consecutively, sort of brought the trophy to the hearts of most, if not all, Nottingham Panthers fans over that time. So, I always want us to take the Challenge Cup seriously. But, I'm aware that not everybody shares that same opinion about the use and the purposefulness of the Challenge Cup, and the fact that I forgot the chap's name now who's sent the tweet in.
Tony DeMarco.
The fact that Tony's suggesting that you make fairly wholesale changes to the Challenge Cup probably, demonstrates that from a lot of fans' perspectives, if you are going to start chopping and changing and experimenting with one of the domestic competitions, then it might be best to do it in the Challenge Cup, because the impacts won't be quite as seismic as if you make some radical changes to the rules that govern the league, or the playoffs at the end of the season. So, I hope the Challenge Cup stays, and I think that certainly the format that it's in at the moment is about as good as you're going to get. But I mean, just drawing comparisons with the League Cup in football, the bigger clubs have been looking at that with, less and less enthusiasm over the last few years, to the point now where I know it's different because, you can bring in a whole new load of players in football and, just populate your side with a load of young players and youth team footballers. Can't do that so much in ice hockey because you don't have the depth in the roster. But I'd hate to think that the Challenge Cup would be, viewed with the same sort of derision as the League Cup is in football circles. So I'd leave it as it is for the time being. And I'd probably try and explore other avenues to accelerate the introduction of young Brits into the Elite League generally. Okay,
thanks for the guys, and thanks, Tony, for your questions. I'm going to move over to Twitter now. And Jerome Lucy got in touch, and I'm going to read it word for word. So, quite simple this week. The Panthers PR machine is in overdrive, conning, in my opinion, the happy clapper fan base. If Sheffield were top in November, they would have been proactive and not waiting to see what happened. They would have seized the moment. Who is to blame, GM or CN, Tina?
Well, that's a big because I'm not sure I understand the second part of the question, if I'm honest. Now,
no, I don't either.
If Jerome is listening live, I will. I'll keep my response at a measured pace, and maybe he can expand on it a little bit, perhaps. The Panthers PR machine is out. I can understand where he's coming from in sort of the first part of that statement. I don't know if he's alluding to anything specific, but there have been a lot of tweets lately. But we have had 2 new signings. We've had a player leave. I mean, there's been a lot of interviews with Matt Davis from the Evening Post. There's been a lot of post-match interviews, pre-match interviews, but I can't say personally that I have noticed a particular surge in PR, and I can't say that I have noticed a particular surge in PR on a particular subject. I mean, any kind of social media, you can guarantee that neither Gary Moran or Corey Nielsen have got anything to do with it. That's Callum's department. I don't know who's looking after it tonight, because Callum has sort of alluded to the fact that it's not him. So so obviously somebody else is over in Belfast looking after that. And just to sort of return to the point, that I made earlier. Callum has alluded to some sort of news coming out about that. So perhaps there is somebody else who's going to be working in the Panthers media, sort of working within the Panthers media structure. Don't know, but I don't think that I have seen much of a surge in Panthers PR. I think there has been just as much. I mean, it's probably through December and some of January, it probably got quite repetitive with the, we didn't win, and this happened, and Corey Nielsen's post-match interviews have been very much, we didn't win because of this, and I can imagine that would get quite repetitive as well. So I'm sorry if I'm not understanding you properly, Jerome, but I don't genuinely see that anything has really changed. I mean, the last change I've been sort of aware of was sort of towards the end of last season, during the summer, when Callum really started to, get his foot in and really start taking hold of Panthers social media. That's the last big change that I have noticed with Panthers media output in general, and that was a good thing for me personally.
Okay, Adney, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, with regards to the PR thing, I understand what people mean by the whole PR thing, and I understand that some people don't like it, but I do have sympathy for the club in, what else can they do? They still have to tweet out news. Well, they still have to put out news. They still have to put out match reports. They have to put out interviews. They have to put out tweets and stuff like that. And yes, they do things that irritate me. In the past, the whole flower things and the tweeting pictures of people, retweeting pictures of people's season tickets and stuff like that. It gets irksome. But if that gets people through the door, then that's what they're there to do. It's what their job is. So I like I say, I agree that for a lot of people it probably isn't, great, or it is boring, or it is repetitive. But I don't necessarily think it's a con as such. I just think that they have to do something. Can you imagine if after a loss we just put out one match report, one interview with Corey, and then that was it? We didn't put out any other news until the Saturday when we said we've got a game, it's game day or whatever. There'd be an outcry about that. And I know that you have to strike a balance. I know there has to be a happy medium, but I do think that we are quick to jump on the off ice media side of things, and to be fair as well, not just the Panthers themselves. I've seen a lot of stuff directed at Matt Davis, at ourselves at MP Hockey Live, where it's stuff that ultimately we don't have a clue, and we can only put out what we see or what we've heard, or in Matt's case, what he's been told in interviews, and yet people seem to get the hump quite easily about some of the stuff that gets put out. And like I say, I just think that there has to be a fine line and a balance, and I appreciate that. But by the same token, they have to do these things to keep getting. And yes, they might prey on the so-called happy clappers, as it were, as Jerome says. They might sort of prey on that, but if it works, then that's all well and good, I suppose. It's about keeping people engaged, and it's about keeping people wanting to come down. And you can't argue that we've had a tough season and a tough couple of seasons, realistically, but we're still getting crowds. So on that side of things, I don't know if you can really criticise it and stuff. The bit about Sheffield, I presume he's sort of saying that if they were top in November, they'd have looked to have pushed on. They'd have made a real emphasis on challenging for the league, and possibly would have perhaps tried to sign a player or two to strengthen the team, despite the fact that they're already at the top. And I presume he's getting at the fact that we haven't done that this year. That being said, Sheffield themselves this season have come out and said that they've struggled to sign players when they've looked to sign players, and he might be a fantastic. I've not really seen enough of him to warrant an opinion, but he seems to be much loved and a decent enough player. But the fact that they keep signing Romberg every 2 weeks is a testament to how they've struggled to sign players, because he keeps coming and going. So it is tough, and I do think that at times this season we have been poor in our sort of decision making at times. But I also think that realistically that big slump in December, it was brushed, it was touched upon earlier on about the fact that we've signed a young team, and you sort of think, well, is that partly to blame as well? You've got a young, hungry team who've done so well in Europe and overachieved that they've sort of, it's almost like they've forgotten how to lose almost. I remember it would have been, what year would it have been? In fact, it would have been the year that we won the playoffs, I think it was, when we went to, did we go to Rouen that year, Adam?
Yes.
In the Continental Cup. I'm pretty certain that before we went to the Continental Cup, we were riding quite high, and I'm not convinced if we'd lost all season. And we went to the Continental Cup and lost all 3 games, and when we came back, we just couldn't win, and we ended up gassing a couple of players. I think Blas Emerzik was one of them. He got gassed. Obviously, the netminder, I don't remember if it was Davis Parley or Evan Lindsay that year, but the netminder went. We made a few signings, and we turned it around towards the end of the season and managed to get the playoffs out of it. But it's winning and losing is a habit, and unfortunately, if you cannot snap out of it quick, it's very easy to get stuck in it and stuck in a rut. And yes, we shouldn't have gone 8 games losing. That's a given. But it is very much a habit, and it's almost like trying to shake a monkey off your back. And there's been many teams that have done it. There's been many teams that will do it in the future, and I'm sure that we'll go through spells again in the future. But it's about, if you lose that one game, it's about making sure you don't lose your second one, because it's very, very easy to get into a rut and get sort of stuck in that trend.
Adam, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think Andy makes some good points there about the Panthers' social media side of things and having to keep the profile of the club as high as possible. There's nothing I dislike more than seeing someone try and make something out of nothing. If we've lost heavily, somebody's clutching at straws or trying to find, the merest positive to try and cling to, take into the following week's game. But I've learned just to move on by. You just sweep past it. You can always scroll down on Twitter or Facebook. You can. You don't have to sort of get hung up on the detail of what the club's doing. And yeah, there probably are there will be some gullible fans out there, and some people that are very easily influenced by social media. But over time, what you hope is that the fans that are maybe a bit wet behind the ears, a bit new to the sport, will actually understand the sport better over a period of months and maybe even seasons in some cases, and they'll be able to understand that if they feel that the way something's worded on Twitter or Facebook is almost twisting the truth or spinning something a bit, then they'll see it for what it's worth and scroll on and look at something else.
Have we lost Ant? Is he gone?
I think Ant's gone.
I should actually unmute my mic.
Hey,
I was
there we
eating
go.
ice cream, so I didn't want it to come over the microphone. We'll just give a quick score update. Panthers are out of the Challenge Cup. The game has finished 7-6 to empty netters there for the Belfast Giants halfway through the final period. They will play the winners of Cardiff against Sheffield, where Cardiff have turned it around quite dramatically. It is 7-1 currently to the Devils, so they lead 9-7 on aggregate. So there's plenty of goals, if nothing else, in the Challenge Cup tonight. Ginler on the Cage Forum came up with a question, and it refers to the press release that came out a couple of days ago to do with the playoffs. So Tina, you can have first digs, and it simply asks, what did TCW think about the EIHL changing the playoff seeding rules late in the day, having already announced a new format to be used many months ago?
I think it stinks. I don't think the actual format is a problem, because I had a quick look today, and with either the new rules or the old rules, if the league was to finish today and we were going for playoffs this weekend, it would be exactly the same. Wouldn't matter either way. I don't see the point. It seems pointless. It seems. I mean, the change in format doesn't change anything for me. It might change it's a bit of jostling for position, just in case the conference leaders don't get into the top 8. How that's going to happen, I don't know. I don't think it is. It would be a fairly freak mathematic anomaly for that to happen. But why would you arrange something at the beginning of the season? Make sure everybody knows about it, which they did. This was something that went out at the beginning of the season. Your league leader will be seeded first. Conference leaders, should none of them be the league leaders, will be second, third, and fourth based on league position. Fine. Don't see what the problem was with that. Why change it? I haven't got a problem with using either format, but why change your mind halfway through the season? Seriously, what is the point? There's no logic to it at all, and there doesn't appear to have been any justification supplied. I mean, fair enough, fine. We're fans. We don't need to know what goes on in the Elite League boardroom. But, as was rightly pointed out on Twitter by somebody, there hasn't been a board meeting for a little while. So, I mean, did they get together in a WhatsApp group and just go? Somebody just say, "Oh, I think we need to change the playoff seedings." I'm not. As I say, I don't care what format we're using. If you want to use just top 8 in the league, fine, crack on. If you want to use league leader, then conference leaders, and then the other 4, fine, crack on. Just stop changing your damn mind. I completely get where some changes have had to be made halfway through the season. Lest we forget the EIHL DOPS debacle. That needed to be done because that was a sham. That was absolutely, completely unforgivable, and I still think that stinks. There's still more to that than we're being told. I've got nothing to. Again, I will stress nothing to back that up, but something stinks with that. But that had to be changed, and I understand that was changed. That's not a problem. But this is just such a simple thing to change, and it kind of demonstrates that the Elite League board are being a bit whimsical. And that's the wrong message to be sending out. This league comes under enough criticism already without flimsy rule changes halfway through a season. It just baffles me. It doesn't make any sense.
Andy, in our WhatsApp group, Cat's Whiskers WhatsApp group, you in particular were saying how unfair the current system would be, particularly to Belfast, who second in the league as it stands would end up being something like 5th or 6th seeds. I mean, what's your thoughts on the mid-season change?
Well, I think it's crazy. I mean, I didn't realise that it had been announced as to what the structure was so early. I asked the question and said, "What's the criteria for the playoff seedings? Do we know?" And then I saw obviously what had been sent back in response and presumed that had come out that day because I'd seen that there'd been a press release about it. But for instance, you've got to feel sorry for Cardiff would be first seeds, and as it stands, they'd play Brayhead. That's a given. Manchester are currently third in the league. They'd become second seeds and would have us. Then Guildford would be third seed. Fife would then be third seeds, who are in 5th place, and would play Sheffield. Now it's Guildford I feel most sorry for, because in 4th place they would then have to be the away team against 2nd place in the league. And they're getting nothing out of it whatsoever. It was Guildford that I felt sorry for because they were having to play Belfast. rather than Belfast, because it's that whole sort of, well, all of a sudden Belfast become the 4th seeds and Guildford, who finished 4th, then become the 5th seeds. Now, I know ultimately this could all change by the end of the season, but it just seems the change has been made sort of unfairly. I think, and I don't, the conspiracy theorist in me thinks that basically they've announced that it's going to be 1 to 8, that's it, and someone has said, oh, hang on a second, but I thought we were going to do the conferences first, and we want the home ice advantage because we've won our conference, and that's fair enough for them to say so, because that's how it's been for the past however many years that we've had the conferences. But they shouldn't then just change it on the back of it. They should have stuck to their guns and said, no, this is how we're doing it this year. Raise it again at the next board meeting for next season, and we'll discuss it, and we'll see how it goes this year, and we'll look into it for next season. But again, just there's been so many rule changes this season, and it's been a real farce of a season because of it. Tina's mentioned DOPS, and I appreciate the fact that the whole Freitas and Goulikos thing was mental, and something had to be done because it was getting sort of worldwide press and not in a good way. But even that, still, it was good for about 2 weeks, and then it started to the responses and the explanations started to almost get personal. Some of the decisions are still just as baffling, and it's been compounded by this week's news of Rosa, where he's been given a 5-game ban for something that happens. From my vantage point in Block 4, I can tell you now that there's plenty of times that I've seen a Panthers player do exactly the same thing this season to what Rosa's got a 5-game ban for, but because it's down a tunnel and no one can see it, it's never picked up. But because he's done it and they don't have a tunnel there, he's got a 5-game ban for it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. When you got players that are throwing headshots and stuff like that, and they're getting less bans from someone that's thrown a stick on the floor off the ice, and it's mental. And that's another story. There's the bringing in 4 refs halfway through the season. It's a joke. I'm all for the 4 ref system. Don't get me wrong, I'd like to see a better quality of ref at times. But I'm all for giving teams and giving players and fans the best opportunity to getting the results right. And having 4 refs on the ice, the 4-man system, is the best way to go about that. So I'm all for it. But there is no way on earth that should have been brought in halfway through the season. I think that's crazy. I really do, because it's not made a mockery, but it's made a farce of the games that have gone on before that was brought in. And you think of a game that's potentially been won because of a decision's been missed down one end of the ice, because the ref was at the other one, and you sort of think, well, hang on a sec, if we'd have had 2 refs, that wouldn't have happened. We've lost points because of it, and I appreciate it's all ifs and ands and all that sort of stuff, but I don't think they should be changing rules halfway through the season, no matter how good or how much for the better it's seen or supposedly being. I think it should be waiting until the off season.
And Adam, changing the playoff seedings midway through season, not a great idea. But does it pretty much make the conferences pointless?
Yeah, I mean,
the conference title itself.
Yeah, I think it does demean and dilute the importance of winning the conference. I mean, a lot's been said by Andy and Tina over the actual seedings and the revised approach to them that the Elite League have announced this week. But to me, it just seems like the Elite League are fiddling while Rome burns. Is this a bigger issue than going out to try and get a commercial director? Is this a bigger issue than going out and trying to secure a TV deal for the league? No, in my opinion. They're the priorities, surely, for the Elite League. rather than making mid-season changes to the way the seedings are arranged. So I think Andy alluded to it a minute or two ago. This league is its own worst enemy because, it does some good things and then it takes 2 steps back. And it's done it as long as the Elite League's been in existence. And unfortunately, it does rebound on the status of the league and its profile because, how can anyone take an organisation of a league seriously when you don't know from one season to another whether the rules that you sort of embrace at the start of a season are going to be the rules at the end of the season? The absolute thing that you want from rules and from an organisating body is you want certainty. And you just don't get that with the Elite League. And I know I've gone off the seedings issue a little bit there, but I think it's more symptomatic, really, of the league by and large, in that you just don't know where you stand with them. Because every week you're thinking, well, what's going to happen this week? We're going to get a shock announcement about something happening or, a revision to a long-established rule. And I don't think that does the sport any good at the highest level in this country. So to me, I think that there were bigger priorities that the higher echelons of the Elite League could have been focused on and working harder over than changing the seedings for the playoffs.
Fair enough. So again, I hope that answers your question as far as how we think about things here. I'm aware we've been going an hour, so I've got 3 more questions to ask you. So the next one, quickly on this one. And it is from Phil Rawlins, who sent his question in via email. And he asks, following the return of Chris Lawrence to the NIC, now playing for Dundee, and the mixed reaction from supporters, how does he compare with previously heralded imports? Does being a character and nice guy substitute for points scored? Has anyone else prompted such divergent views? Now, as soon as I read this question, I immediately thought Jay Galbraith, Andy. Because obviously he got quite a negative reaction when he came back first time with Brayhead.
Well, I was going to say that I didn't realise that there was much of a reaction with Galbraith when he came back, but apparently there was. I just think that, I have no issue with... I have no issue before the game, or even potentially, I know in the NHL they usually do it sort of during the game at some point in one of their TV timeouts. They'll play a little video clip of a sort of a player that's returning, and I have no sort of issue with that. Obviously, we don't do that here as such because obviously we don't think we've not got the technology, and obviously we don't have the TV timeouts. I've no issues with us. Applauding a bloke before the game. I have no issues applauding a bloke after the game. But I just think sometimes it goes massively over the top for players that don't necessarily warrant that kind of reaction. And I appreciate people have their favourite players, and that's that's a personal point of view. But there wasn't this much fanfare last season when Matthew Myers came back, and that's a guy who's played 9 seasons with us. Won countless trophies with us, was an assistant captain, and there isn't that kind of fanfare for a player like him. And I made a joke out of it in the sense, I mentioned John Coleman when he went to Coventry, and it sparked a bit of a game where people were trying to remember average players who came back to us and stuff like that. But for me, like I say, if you like the bloke and you want to, I do think that when players return for the first time, that there should be some sort of mention, because at the end of the day, whether you like to or not, they've put a shift in for your team. But I just think that sometimes it gets a little bit sort of almost sycophantic and a bit sort of sickening, a bit sort of OTT. But it's one of them things. I just think that if you go down that route of sort of hero worshipping a player that played a season and a half with us and was, he was a top point scorer 1 year, and realistically he was he was famous for turning it off and on, being in the pub, going on holiday during the season, miming to a song, and it's it's that whole, yes, he's a character thing, but there are players that have not done those things but have grafted for everything. Someone like Brandon Benedict, he gets, when he first came back, it was a case of, please welcome back Brandon Benedict. He raised his stick, he got a polite applause. That type of player that has bled, there's been sweat, blood, tears, everything for this club on every single shift. That he ever iced, and they don't get that fanfare, which I is my sort of issue with it. Is if you're going to be sort of over the top and sycophantic about player X, then you need to look at what player Y is put into this team, and he deserves to be lauded an awful lot more than player X. So like I say, everyone's got their favourite players. I'm sure there'll be a few people that are listening to this that will get upset about the fact that I've called Chris Lawrence average at best. But that's my opinion. I just think that there are better players out there that don't get any credit that we've had. And someone like him has had almost like the red carpet's been laid for him.
Tina, anybody that's returned for you that has had quite the fanfare that Larry did on Sunday?
Well, I didn't really see it as much fanfare. I expected more, to be honest. I'm glad there wasn't as much as I thought there was going to be, because, I agree with Andy in a sense in terms that he's saying that he's average at best, but I think part of the problem with Chris Lawrence is we expected so much more from him, and we knew that we could have got so much more from him, but we seemed to get more from him off ice than we did on. And I think that's kind of the issue where, I think a lot of people have vented on social media about us, figuratively laying that red carpet out for him. I mean, one thing I will say as a kind of a tangent is that often when players do come back to play against teams that they played for, they have a certain enthusiasm to them, and they have an extra impetus to do well, and I didn't see that at all. I mean, I know he's just come back from a fairly serious injury, and he's probably lucky to be playing at all this season. But I just looked at, well, I say I looked at Chris. I barely noticed him, and I came to the end of the game, and I thought, that's Dundee's problem now. That's what we had on and off for 3 seasons, and I'm glad we don't have that anymore, because I do prefer to see the guys who graft. I know I'm ever so slightly biased because I'm one of his sponsors, but Eric Lindhagen is my type of player. He may not always produce, but he works. You can see that every shift he goes out there, and he's left it all out on the ice, no matter what. Wherever you put him on the ice, whatever position you play him in, whatever you ask him to do, he goes out there, he does it, he gives everything. And I would every day of the week take 22 Eric Lindhagens over 22 Chris Lawrence. In fact, I would take 22 Eric Lindhagens over 40 Chris Lawrences, frankly.
Hey, Adam, nice blokes or complete and utter miserable gits that perform on the ice?
Well, I always judge players by what they do on the ice, because ultimately that's what they're paid by the organisation to do. Anything they do off the ice, to me, is largely irrelevant. I know that the club have to do, social nights with, meet the fans and the quiz nights, which are, by and large quite good and enjoyable. But to be honest, I want my players, my professional players and imports that, you build a roster around, to be putting in 100% every game. And Lawrence did not do that in his time in Nottingham, and is, I suppose, being polite, you could call him a precocious talent. One of these that, when he's good, he's really good, but equally, when he was poor and he didn't fancy it, he was anonymous, like he was on Sunday night for Dundee. And that was really annoying. And there's nothing more annoying than seeing a player with undoubted skill not utilising it because of motivational problems or because they're distracted by things that are happening off ice. And I think the legend of Lawrence just sort of built and built and built. And yeah, he might be a nice guy off the ice. But to be honest, how many points do you win for being good off the ice? Because the last I looked, you don't get absolutely anything. So, we could have a roster full of rather mean, aggressive blokes who go out there, leave it all on the ice, get 2 points most weeks, and we get a league title. Or we could have 3 or 4 Chris Lawrences in every roster who act almost as a drag anchor on what the team can produce because, you're not getting 100% from every line or every possible angle on the ice. And it's a social media thing, isn't it? Because in the days leading up to last Sunday's game, there was a lot of stuff where, quite frankly, I just wanted a sick bag because it was really, really annoying stuff. But funnily enough, going back to what Tina said, I don't think we made a great deal about his return on Sunday. It was fairly low key, but then he's already had one return, hasn't he? Because he left us and came back with Coventry, didn't he?
Sure.
Yeah, so, how many comebacks does he want? Should we call him, I don't know, Sinatra? Will he sign for somebody else in the summer and then have another comeback next year at the NIC? Don't know, but no, I, like Tina said, I completely concur with her. He's Dundee's problem now, so, if their fans are happy getting one good game out of 5 from him, then that's their lookout.
Okay, Adam, I'll stay with you, and it's again on the sort of player liking thing. Anthony James got in touch and simply asked, why have the fans not taken to Galbraith or Garnett like they took to Weekman?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that. I think early in the season, we took to Garnett, especially at the height of the CHL performances. But then, December happened, and I just think that it's acted as a real mood hoover, understandably, on the whole arena. So we just don't seem to get excited about individual players anymore, whether they're Garnett, Galbraith or whoever. Was Mika really a character? Or, dare I say, did we feel a bit sorry for Mika because he had quite a few injury problems whilst he was with us? And it seemed like he was, always on the wrong end of a bit of bad luck or, something that was avoidable. And maybe that sort of cut a lot of ice with the fan base, and we felt a little bit sorry for Mika. But I think Mika was a damn good netminder. There's quite a strong argument to say that he had very little protection in front of him for the time he spent in Nottingham, which sort of meant that he had to stand on his head more than once to bring some points back for the team. But yeah, this season, I don't know with the netminding, because I think Galbraith and Garnett, but mainly Garnett, have got really stellar CVs playing wise. So is it because we sort of expect good performances or more consistent good performances from Galbraith and Garnett than we did from Mika Weekman? So therefore, we don't get quite as euphoric when Galbraith puts in a great 60 minutes and saves 45 out of 46 shots, or Garnett doing similar earlier in the season, because we know that they've got a good pedigree and they're very, very good netminders when all's said and done. So I think it might be a little bit to do with that, in that Mika was a bit of a surprise factor, dare I say. I know when we signed him it was a case of Mika who, but when we signed Garnett and Galbraith, they've had very distinguished careers playing pro hockey. So, expectations are probably a little bit higher with regards to both of their performances for us.
I mean, Andy, 2 years Mika spent with us. Galbraith's had just over half a season. Garnett the same. Can you understand why they've not been heralded as much?
I actually think Galbraith has. I think Garnett hasn't, and I think that he's faced an awful lot of unfair criticism since Galbraith's come in. Don't get me wrong, I've always been an advocate of playing, riding a hot goalie, as it were. So at the current stage, and at times, it's certainly been Galbraith, but I've not really bought into this. He's fantastic, and that he's still, whether it's for team in the defence or whatever, the netminder is still shipping in, plenty of goals. What was it, 5 again tonight? There was plenty at the weekend. Admittedly, they split that game in Sheffield, didn't they? Was it 4-2?
I think so, yeah.
I think Galbraith is certainly universally liked. But it's that strange attitude that we seem to have to certain types of players. I think Wheatman is the one that's named in the question, but the attitude towards someone like Henry Passel last season was just crazy.
Hysteria.
He wasn't very good. He was all right. Don't get me wrong. He was all right, but he certainly wouldn't be anywhere near a starting netminder role. And we had the same with it was that little kid in the Continental Cup that we had. Was it Jonas Sari?
Oh yeah.
There was another one. Like in the off season, you used to go on the threads and like, who do people want back? And people were saying that they'd want him back. He's an import. He was like a, David Sarkanis last year. We have these players that are and I kind of get why they're sort of acted upon like that, because it's that whole sort of we're not expecting much out of him, but don't you try hard and into your persistent little player and that sort of thing. Well, yeah, but he's not very. It doesn't mean he's any good. And I just think that it's the same. It's kind of the same attitude that we get when a backup netminder goes in and makes a routine save, and you get that big, wild, whooping applause that must be quite patronising to a player that's played his whole life in a position and made a save that he's, yes, he's playing against better opposition than he probably ever has done before, but realistically, he's making a save that he's probably made millions of times before and no one's batted an eyelid. But it's that kind of mentality. But to go back to the question, I actually think Galbraith is universally liked within the fan base. I don't know if he's quite hit sort of Mika Weekman stage, but ultimately we've not won anything with him. He's not been here that long. I'm sure in time, if we'd win the playoffs or whatever, and he's the starting netminder, I'm sure he'll go down as a hero. Like they always.
Tina, I've left you till last because obviously you've got a bit of a thing for goalies.
I love goalies. I've got goalie love. Yeah, I've got goalie love.
Weekman 3 trophies in 2 seasons. Does that play a part?
I think it plays a part, but I think the thing about Weekman is that when he came to the Panthers, he had massive pads to fill. Because, certainly from my perspective, the only goalie I really remember before Weekman was Kowalski, because I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a hockey fan before, pre-Kowalski. I remember watching a couple of games where we dragged Kevin St. Pierre out of retirement after the Coventry bench clearance because Kowalski was injured. So, I generally speaking, I only really remember Kowalski. Now, when he left, there was a hell of a lot of emotion surrounding that, and also the way that he left. After taking that injury, when he was sort of upended by Westgarth in Belfast, and I think that there was a lot of anticipation and trepidation about who was coming in to replace him. I think the Panthers fans in general were quite attached to Kowalski. Now, Weekman did the best thing he could have done. He didn't try. to be Kowalski. He didn't try to emulate him. He didn't. In my head, I think that Wheatman didn't even look at who he was. I think the first time Wheatman knew anything about him is when he met him at Corey Nielsen's testimonial. That's in my head, that's what happened. And I think Wheatman did himself a massive favour by just being himself. And I think he is quite witty. I think he is a bit of a character, and I think that endeared him to people, along with the whole not trying to be Kowalski thing. I think that stood him in good stead with the Panthers fan base, and him being the first netminder post Kowalski. I think there was still possibly sort of a lingering attachment to the position rather than Wheatman himself. So I think that sort of carried it through. Now, I don't think the trophies are as much of it as everything as I've just said. But winning trophies certainly helps. I think the fact that we have two import netminders who are both capable of filling the starting netminder's role, I think that makes it a little bit less clear in terms of deciding on who's your favourite, as it were. The whole sort of emotional attachment, if you will. Because last season we had Wheatman. He was our number one, 100%. Nobody was in any doubt about that. And then Henry came in. Yeah, Henry was a character. He provided some entertainment on a night or two. Skydome specifically. Sorry, had to get that one in there. But Wheatman was still the number one. I think it's a little bit less clear with Garnett and Galbraith. And I think the switching around is kind of why. I don't think. I think Galbraith is sort of. I agree with Andy. I think Galbraith is more universally liked than Garnett since the CHL campaign finished, because we've seen more wins from Galbraith than Garnett. So I think with us having the three netminders that we've got and two netminders who could very easily both be our starting netminder, I think there's a bit of a dilution of feeling towards the netminding position, where in previous years it's been a whole lot more clear.
Thanks, guys. Just before we go to the last question, it has finished in Cardiff. They have pulled it around. They beat the Sheffield Steelers 7-1 and will play the Belfast Giants in this year's Challenge Cup final from Ice Arena, Wales. So best of luck to those two teams and congratulations for making the final. And we'll go to our final question of the night, which is from David Moy, who is a Manchester Storm fan, who has sent in a few questions over the last few weeks. So again, thank you for getting in touch, David. And he asks, we are about 70% through the league campaign. Perhaps a good reflection before the playoff scramble begins. I don't know whether he wrote this before or after the Elite League's announcements, but hey. I would like to hear your views on the team that has most overachieved in their league position so far, where one considers budgets, expectations, last season's finishing position, etc. And at the other end of the scale, who are the biggest underachievers? I'll go on to his predictions after you've had your answers. So, Andy, you can take us off.
Well, for me, what do you want? Just one of each, or
up to you?
Well, I think ultimately Manchester, Guildford, and Fife have done miraculously. But I think if I had to choose one of those three, I think if it's evened out and everyone's played the same amount of games and Fife win them all, I would say Fife. But they're 4 games in hand on sort of Cardiff. I've always said I'd rather have the points on the board than the games in hand. So with that in mind, at this stage, as of today, I'd say Guildford for my overachievers. For my underachievers, and to be brutally honest, there is a fair few to choose from. As Sheffield, bred Coventry, I'm actually going to go with. I'm actually going to go with Coventry because I can't see how they're going to break into the playoffs at all, and in the conference that they're in, that staggers me. I really expected them to make the playoffs, and they are. We've underachieved. Sheffield have underachieved. Brayhead have definitely underachieved as well. But Coventry are 6 points out of the playoff picture, and I just think that for a team like Coventry, I think that's really quite a stinker. But like I say, any one of those four. But like I say, I think that would be. That would be where I go with is Coventry and Guildford for me.
I think Ant might have muted himself again.
Has he eaten ice cream again?
I was actually making myself a drink this time. Sorry. Tina, your overachievers and underachievers so far this season?
Not too dissimilar to Andy, to be honest. My overachievers, in fact, I'm going to pick on the new boys, both ends of that particular spectrum. Guildford, definitely not where I expected them to be. If I'm honest, I didn't know anything about them at the beginning of the season. It's quite a task to make the jump up into a league that has so many more imports than you are used to playing with, and they had a very, very average sort of start, but I think they really have been the surprise package at the important end of the season. So if they can keep that up, then good for them. Good for them. It's good for the league, definitely. And I think my underachievers, I have to say, unfortunately, Milton Keynes. I kind of expected their positions to be more switched, if I'm honest. If you consider that Milton Keynes' head coach is also Team GB's head coach, it kind of, you sort of step back on that information a little bit, and you think, well, you'd think he'd be able to tackle this league a little bit more smoothly than he actually has. So, they've both got a cracking set of players. They've both done really well with their recruitment, and credit to both teams, because when their starting netminders got injured. And, Milton Keynes have done it twice as well. When their starting netminders got injured, they moved very quickly for replacements. Brian Stewart got injured. They got Carosi in quite quickly at Guildford. And, Weekman himself is a replacement for Adrobny, who, they decided to release. And then Weekman gets injured and they bring in Passel. I would imagine that, Weekman maybe had something to do with that himself. But it's good for them, absolutely 100%. Good for them for rising to the challenges. But it looks like Guildford have definitely made the better of it this season.
And Adam?
Yeah, I think I'd go along with what Andy and Tina are saying there. I think, at the top end, the overachievers, Guildford, first year elite league team. They've done incredibly well to adapt and acclimatise to elite league hockey. I think they're the top scorers in the league as well. So they show that, exciting offensive hockey can, bring the crowds in, which I think it's doing down there. They're playing to largely full buildings every week. And they've taken the league by storm, really, by just playing good swashbuckling hockey. And I know they've conceded a fair few goals as well, but makes for very exciting games, and they've obviously learned how to, just stay ahead of who they're playing and pick up those important wins. But Manchester, give them an honourable mention as well, because they don't play out of a particularly big building. I think the capacity of Altrincham is about 2,000. So fair play to what Finity's doing up there. Put together a very, very good roster. and lots of offensive punch on that lineup as well. So it's good to see. It's good in some ways, and I know it's we're one of the direct losers out of this, but it is good to see every now and then a little bit of a shake up in the what you might call the elite league order, with some of the bigger teams down at the bottom. I wish it wasn't Panthers down in 7th place. I wish it was another arena side, but there you go. But yeah, every now and then just to get a mix up of teams, it sort of gives hope to the teams that are playing out the smaller buildings like Manchester and Guildford that with good recruitment and sensible recruitment, you can get yourself up towards the top of the elite league standings. So, but I would give it to Guildford just by a smidgen, because obviously Manchester have had the benefit of elite league hockey before, so they sort of knew what they were doing. Whereas Guildford, it's a total step into the unknown for them. Underachievers, I'd say Coventry. For the reasons previously expressed by Andy. Stewart's in his second year as coach there. I would have thought that there'd been some sort of improvement from last year to this year, but if anything, they've gone backwards. And I know they've had their woes with injuries, and they've carried a short bench for considerable stretches of the season. But really, for a team as established in the elite league as Coventry Blaze are, I'd really expect them to be, doing better and making a better fist of it than they are this season, because, the way it's going, their season is just fizzling out at a spectacular rate. Greyhead aren't having the greatest of seasons, but, John Tripp's first year coaching the Elite League, if he hangs around next year, he'll know a bit more about the Elite League. He'll understand where he wants to strengthen his roster and, probably, get a bit further up the league table. But going back to what Tina said about Guildford and Milton Keynes being in different positions to where she envisaged, I remember, didn't Milton Keynes convincingly beat Guildford home and away in that pair of pre-season friendlies this year?
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of people might have been fooled by that and, wrote Guildford off almost at the earliest possibility. But, Guildford looked like they're going to have the last laugh over everyone that might have been thinking they were going to be in for a long season ahead of them.
Well, thanks for that, guys. David Moy, for reference, he put Manchester, Fife and Guildford in that order as his top 3 overachievers. Obviously, being a Storm fan, puts himself number 1. And then he goes for us, Braehead and Coventry as his 3 duds, with us leading the way there. And I'm sorry to say that take our CHL run out of it, you kind of got to agree with him. It's been pretty dismal since we lost the CHL. That's pretty much.
I actually think if you lump us in, you have to lump Sheffield in.
They will definitely think that they're underachieving at the moment.
They're 2 points ahead of us with a game in hand, and we play them on Saturday. If we win that game, then we're level on points. So, I actually
the comments on Twitter in response to tonight's game against Cardiff, it's eerily familiar to the stuff that we see on a daily basis regarding the Panthers at the moment.
Yeah, and I just think that because of the attitude and their history, I still see Sheffield as more of a threat to the league than we ever are. And so with that in mind, I'd argue at this stage that 2 points behind them in 6th and 7th place, that Sheffield have probably underachieved more than we have. But it's one of them things. It's both rubbish.
Whatever happens, you can't turn that around currently, can you? So on that happy note,
both as bad as each other, as it were. But I wouldn't say that they get off scot-free.
No,
it's a good job. It's a sellout on Saturday, Andy, because you weren't building the fixture up to be a classic.
Well, based on tonight's games, it's going to be a golf fest.
Let's hope so.
Else. So it's probably going to be 0-0 with a penalty shot win. And on that note, guys, thank you very much to everybody that sent in questions. There was a few that we didn't get a chance to answer. Really sorry for that, but we will carry them over to next week. So thank you to the panel tonight. It has been Andy Haywood.
Anytime.
Adam Reddish.
Pleasure as always.
And Tina Taylor.
TTFN.
we'll be back on Monday for our usual podcast. Until then, good night.
This edition of the Cat's Whiskers podcast was brought to you by the Bunkers Hill Hockley.